Let's get real about the love of a cheetah girl. Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. Recently, Adrienne Bailon, formerly Cheetah Girl, formerly of The Real, and Rob Kardashian's ex-girlfriend, did a podcast interview with Angie Martinez with her husband Israel Houghton, who is apparently a gospel singer, and it's got the internet buzzing, so I thought we could talk about their relationship. Before I get into this, first of all, still having a heat wave, so apologize for the AC feedback, but my camera overheats if I don't run it. So hopefully the heat wave will be over soon and I can turn this off. Also, my usual disclaimer, I don't know anybody in this video, I don't know anybody personally, I don't know what people are like behind closed doors, so I am simply basing my analysis on the public information that is available to everybody. Really, at the end of the day, like, my analysis of these celebrities and these celebrity couples is not really about the celebrity. At the end of the day, it's about the lessons we can take from these celebrity relationships and their public personas, and the lessons we can take into our own lives so we can have happier, healthier lives and relationships. So let's get into Adrienne Bailon and Israel Houghton. Not familiar with them. They did a podcast interview with Angie Martinez. I recommend you watching it if you really want some context for this video, because I'm not going to show clips because I get into too many copyright issues when I show clips. But as far as podcast interviews go, it's a pretty short watch. It's only about like an hour and 20. But one of the things that really stood out to me at the beginning was the fact that I feel like it was supposed to be an interview with Adrienne about her career, and then they were gonna invite her husband Israel into the interview later on in the interview. They ended up bringing him in earlier, and then they didn't really get back to talking about Adrienne. It became so much about their relationship and more about Israel. It really felt like he kind of hijacked the interview, and I don't know if that was intentional or just, you know, the way that it ended up flowing, but I just kind of got a bad vibe from the whole thing. Like, he seemed to want to like take her moment that could have been about her, and he was invited into the interview, so I'm not saying this was all on him, but I don't know, I just felt watching this like I wanted more Adrienne, because this was supposed to be her interview, and it ended up kind of becoming more an interview with Israel. And, you know, maybe this was just a one-off thing, I don't know, but for me it just felt like he hijacked her moment, and I think that kind of seems like a bad sign for their relationship. I'm always suspicious when anybody kind of steps in a relationship and kind of like hijacks the other one's moment. And honestly, I like Adrienne. I always have. I mean, I'm not saying she's perfect by any means. At the end of the day, I think she's cute. I think she's got tons of personality. I think she's an amazing singer. I did not watch the Cheetah Girls because I feel like that was for a slightly younger audience, like than where I was age-wise. But I did watch her on The Real. Honestly, I got super into watching The Real while my mother was going through her breast cancer treatments, because The Real was on like when I would be like sitting with her while she was going through her chemo. So I love The Real because it was something that was like entertaining and interesting, that was a great distraction for my mom and I while she was going through her treatments, and she's a breast cancer survivor. So as difficult as that time was, I do look back on watching The Real as like it was a nice comfort show for a time that there was so much discomfort. So, you know, I like The Real. I like Adrienne on The Real. I've kind of always felt like she didn't really have the career that I think she could have had. I mean, not that she's had a bad career, but I don't know, I've always felt like she could have been more famous. And the first time I really heard about her and who she was is because she dated Rob Kardashian earlier on in the Keeping Up with the Kardashian series. And I'm gonna go out on a limb here. This might be a bold statement, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say, I believe if Rob Kardashian had not cheated on Adrienne Bailon and they had stayed together, I think the landscape of pop culture would be very different. And look, I do not judge her at all for leaving. I would never judge someone for leaving a cheating partner. And she has said that he cheated and that's why she left, and like fully support that. So I don't judge her for leaving, I judge him for cheating. And you know what? Maybe at the end of the day nothing would have changed, but I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say I really believe that if Rob and Adrienne had stayed together, pop culture would be very different. Because first of all, you know, they would have had a spin-off show. and it would have been much more successful than the spin-off show they tried to do with Rob and Blac Chyna, because Adrienne has so much personality, and I think it probably would have been maybe even one of the first spin-offs they did before like Chloe and Lamar and stuff like that. If he had stayed with Adrienne, Adrienne might have been the motivation that he needed to like get his life together, and he might have been the Rob Kardashian that we remember him as from like Dancing with the Stars and stuff like that. Or maybe not, I don't know. I would never say that it's a woman's responsibility to fix a man or mother a man or make a man into a good man, but I'm gonna go on a limb and say I think Adrienne might have been the woman that might have inspired Rob Kardashian to step up. Now, obviously he cheated, so he screwed that up, and that's on him. And maybe it wouldn't have worked out that way. They would have had a beautiful children. And you know, maybe he would have gotten his life together for her and it all would have worked out, or maybe not. Maybe she would have ended up being cheated on later in life, and or maybe he would have fallen apart and fallen into seclusion and she would have ended up with a couple kids. Like, who knows how that would have worked out, but I'm sure there would have been a spin-off series, and I'm sure it would have been more successful than a lot of the other spin-off series they tried to do with the Kardashians. And also, like, if Adrienne had married into the Kardashian family, she can sing and she's got personality. I would love to have known what Kris Jenner could have done with someone that had talent, because we know what Kris Jenner has done with people that don't have any talent, her kids, who, you know, whatever you say about the Kardashians and their success and whatever, they didn't have any discernible talent, like, at all. Like, them being famous was their only skill. They don't actually have talent. Adrienne has talent, and I would love to know what the power of Kris Jenner could have done with someone that has talent. Again, I wish the best for everybody, and I don't know if Adrienne's life would have been better. I think her career absolutely would have been better. I think she would have been a bigger star. Would never tell her to stay with a cheating man just for that reason. It's one of those things I think about sometimes, like, you know what, like, if Rob hadn't cheated and him and Adrienne had stayed together, I think the landscape of pop culture would be different. I think that they would have had a much more successful spin-off show, and I think Adrienne would have been a much bigger singer, pop star under the management of someone like a Kris Jenner. And you know what? Maybe it wouldn't have worked out. We'll never know, but it's stuff like that that I think about, like what could have been. I don't know. Again, I know I'm idealizing a couple that, you know, may not have been right for each other, and I don't know, sometimes my inner, like, Charlotte York Goldenblatt, like, hopeless romantic comes out. I'm like, what if they had ended up together and been meant for each other and been in love, and like, what could have been? I don't know. I know, and some people are going to be like, you need to get a life and stop thinking about this stuff, and that is a very valid point. So anyway, things did not work out with Adrienne and Rob because allegedly Rob cheated. That's what she said, and frankly, considering Rob's dating history, wouldn't be surprised. Adrienne moved on, and she was with a music producer, Lenny, oh my god, I'm forgetting his name, I don't remember his name. She was with him for like 6 years. He was in like the hip-hop world. From what I hear, they were kind of trying to work on Adrienne's music as having a little bit more of like a hip-hop feel to it. I feel like Adrienne kind of came into the music industry a little bit late for the Latin craze, because she was a little bit younger than kind of like the Latin craze era of the 90s. And I think, you know, her coming in as like the Puerto Rican from New York, they were probably trying to give her like the next J-Lo kind of an edge. I don't know. I loved Adrienne on The Real, but it seemed like her music career, as talented as she is, could just like never take off. Thing about Adrienne's relationship with Lenny, they were together for 6 years and they got engaged. Their engagement didn't last very long. Dating for 6 years before an engagement, for me, red flag. I know there's always nuance in these conversations, but generally speaking, 6 years, a long time. Apparently, because they were originally based in New York, and then Adrienne got the job on The Real, and so she was going to LA, so she was in LA a lot of the time, and he was in New York. Adrienne told a story about when she was with Lenny that she had to be in LA for The Real, but then when she would be in New York, she would stay at his house, and she was kind of like living at his place when she was in New York, and she never had a key to his place. So like when she would be at his place, if he wasn't home, she had to like wait outside until he got home, and he would never give her a key. I mean, that's up there with red flags. So there's a pretty good chance that he was probably cheating as well. I would be shocked to find out that he wasn't. So one of the things that Adrienne really confessed in her interview with Angie Martinez, it was that she's always had this like fear of being cheated on, that in relationships she was always like so terrified of being cheated on, and she clearly has been cheated on. She admits that she was cheated on by Rob Kardashian. Based on the story she's told about her relationship with Lenny, I mean, the fact that they're together for 6 years, she was staying part-time at his house and she wasn't even allowed to have a key, like something suspicious going on there. So she was consistently being cheated on, and I can't help but feel like some of this fear of being cheated on someone, sometimes when you have this like obsessive fear of something, it's almost like you're drawing it in, like that energy of like, I'm so afraid of this, I'm so afraid of this, I'm so afraid of this. You almost end up, and again, I'm not blaming her for being cheated on at all. It's always the fault of the person that cheats. 100% of the time, I firmly believe it's completely the fault of the person who cheats. However, if you live your life in fear of it, unfortunately, oftentimes you end up calling it in. And then the fact that Adrienne admits that she had this fear of being cheated on, which was not really an irrational fear because she was getting cheated on by the partner she was in relationships with. And then she meets Israel, her current husband, whose like 20+ year marriage ended because he was unfaithful to his wife. And then Adrienne decides to marry him, a man who has shown that he cheated. Now, we don't know if he's cheated on Adrienne. This guy has a history of cheating. So it seems like she's got this fear of being cheated on that seems like an obsession in her mind, but it's not really an irrational fear because she is picking partners that cheat. Again, not her fault that somebody cheats, but it does seem like this is a pattern that's going on. And I don't want to diminish anybody's experience that has been cheated on, but I very much believe that the reason that infidelity has not been a pattern for me in relationships, and I'm not saying that I've never been cheated on, but like it hasn't been a consistent pattern for me. And one of the reasons I believe that that is because I have an absolute zero tolerance policy for it. And I'm very grounded in my decision to not tolerate cheating. So I can't stop it from happening in a relationship, but I am very grounded in the fact that I will leave. I will not tolerate it. I have a zero tolerance policy for it. And even in the past, when there has been like some gray areas where I don't know if it was actual infidelity, but there were definitely boundaries crossed, I have walked away because I owned my value in fidelity enough to know that if you are not going to show me fidelity and respect, I will walk away. And because I've proven that to myself, energetically, I know that I will leave. And I'm not saying that it wouldn't hurt. I'm not saying that it wouldn't be a difficult thing to do depending on the relationship, but I'm very grounded in my decision to not tolerate infidelity. And I very much believe that I don't call it in because energetically, I just give off that energy, like I won't tolerate it. So I don't really attract in guys that cheat because I'll walk away. And again, I can't, like, there's nothing you can do to stop someone from cheating, but you can own the fact that you will not tolerate it and own the fact that you will be willing to walk away if infidelity is something that happens. And I really do believe that people that just own that, it just doesn't happen to them as often. I mean, it won't protect you 100%, but I just don't think that it happens as often when you just own that you won't tolerate it. Unfortunately, it's people who, like, they might say they don't want it to happen. I mean, nobody wants someone to cheat. But if they're a little bit more wishy-washy about it, if they're a little bit more like, I don't like it, but like, it was only the one time, and like, you even start making excuses for the other person. Or even like when I see people that want to do like those like fidelity tests or something, like the loyalty tests, and when like you'll hire someone to try to like lure their partner in their DMs to see if they'll cheat or something like that, like those kind of things, are people that are obsessed with going through their partner's phone or something. At the end of the day, to me, that's already a sign there's a problem. Like, if I feel like I have to do that, I already know that there's a problem. I already know there's a trust issue. I already know there's something going on that at the very least, I've lost trust in them. And like, I don't need the loyalty test. I don't need to go through the phone. It's like, if I don't trust you and you're giving me a reason not to trust you, then that's already a problem and we have to address that. And again, I'm not saying that this is gonna prevent you from ever having an issue, but I do think that too many people, like if you're consistently getting cheated on and it's consistently a pattern, you really have to ask yourself, like, how grounded am I in my decision to not tolerate this? Like, how grounded am I in my decision that I will walk away? Because like, you can't stop someone from cheating on you once, but if you find out that they've cheated and you give them another chance, like, they've already shown you who they are. And I think sometimes we have to own what it is that we want and what we don't want, more than wanting a person in our life just to have a person in our life. I am somebody who always puts the blame on the cheater. I always 100% the complete and total responsibility is on the person who cheats. The person who is in the committed relationship that chooses to step outside that relationship, it is 100% on them. I know that there's this whole movement about like, we should be blaming the side chick too. And look, I'm not saying that every side chick is innocent. Although, at the end of the day, you don't really know what she knew. I know in some cases you might know that she knows, but I mean, as someone who has found out she was another woman and didn't know that she was the other woman, I can tell you, oftentimes they don't know. Oftentimes you don't know what this woman has been told. I just think that as a society, like when you start blaming the side chick, you're taking the responsibility off the man who cheats. And honestly, we blame women for the failures of men way too much in our society. So I'm not necessarily saying that the side chick, so to speak, is always 100% innocent and always doesn't know. I can speak from my own experience when I have found out that I was the other woman. I didn't know. But at the end of the day, we need to stop blaming women for the failures of men. If a man cheats, it's his choice to cheat. Now, Adrienne Bailon decided to get into a relationship with Israel Houghton, knowing that Israel was unfaithful in his 20+ year marriage. The story is that he got his mistress pregnant twice. So he did not just like, oops, I had an affair that was a one-night stand. I don't justify that either, but like, it wasn't like a, oh, I just happened to have an affair with another woman. Like, this was like an ongoing affair that he obviously had. And he managed to father 2 children outside of the relationship. I've heard some places say that that is 100% confirmed. I've heard other places say that that's unconfirmed. So I'm not 100% sure, but it does seem to be the general consensus that he did father 2 children outside of his marriage, which to me is just, I've said this before and I will say it again. I know there's a message online that men are like, oh, you can still love your wife but still cheat on her, because for men, like, cheating is not about love, it's just about the physical, or what, like, guys will use every excuse in the book. Here's the thing. It's funny how those same men also will argue that like feelings aren't real and everything is about facts. Well, here's the thing. For men especially, love is not a feeling, it's an action. So a man's actions show whether he loves you or whether he doesn't. And cheating on your partner, cheating on the woman you're committed to, is not an act of love. It's an act of selfishness. It's an act of harming your partner. You know you are doing something that is hurting your partner, so you cannot love them, because men love through action. For men, love is an action. It's not just a feeling. I don't just like, oh, I feel love for her. No, for men, love is an action. And if you deliberately do something that you know will hurt your partner and only benefits you for short-term gratification, newsflash, that is not loving your partner. In addition, you cannot be a cheater and protect and provide for your family. And as a man, men show love by protecting and providing for their family. And if you step outside that and you cheat, you are not protecting and providing for your partner. For one, you cannot be protecting your partner while you are cheating, because for one, you are just on a basic physical level, you are running the risk of picking up something and bringing it back to your partner, which is actively putting their health at risk, which is not protecting her. And that's just on a basic primal level that doesn't even take into consideration the emotional pain that you would be putting your partner through, which is not protecting her heart as well. So that is not an act of love. In addition, if you do step outside that marriage and you create another family, as in you get someone else pregnant, now some of your provisions are going to have to go to another family. That means you are actually taking money away from your own home, from your own family, to now fund another family. That's not providing for your family. So a man cannot cheat on his partner and still love his wife. He can't do it. It's not possible, because for men, love is not a feeling, it is an action. And if you do not act in a loving way towards your partner, and you are not protecting and providing for her, I mean, on a basic level, I'm talking physical protection and financially providing, but that's like basic level, bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But if you're also not protecting her heart, not providing safety and stability for her, all those kind of things, you are not loving your partner. So this whole idea that men can cheat and still love their partner is completely baseless. It's not possible. Now, when it comes to Adrienne and Israel, Israel has admitted that he cheated on his first wife. I know there's a back and forth conversation as to whether or not Adrienne was one of the other women. Don't know. I usually feel like it's a bad sign in a relationship when you have to defend your relationship so hard in the beginning by you keep having to insist that you were not the other woman. And maybe timeline wise everything was on the up and up with Adrienne and Israel, I don't know. I feel like they've given very conflicting stories as to the timeline of their relationship. So I'm skeptical. But we do know that obviously he was having affairs before Adrienne. So Adrienne was obviously not like the reason for his split, because he allegedly fathered children with another woman before Adrienne was even in the picture. So there's that. The conversation of Adrienne and Israel does kind of invite the age-old question of, is it true once a cheater, always a cheater? I know for some people they believe that once a cheater, always a cheater. I'm of the belief that cheating is a choice. You always have a choice to cheat or not to cheat. That is the question. You always have a choice. And that cheating is typically a response to something. And there are a million different reasons why people choose to cheat. I know people always love to go to the, oh, they weren't getting what they wanted in their relationship, so they stepped outside their relationship. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen. That's absolutely a possibility. But there are so many reasons why people make the choice to cheat. I think it varies from person to person. It varies from relationship to relationship. Sometimes it has nothing to do with the relationship. There are some people that cheat simply because they're bored in their life and they need something that causes chaos in their life just to feel alive. And I'm not justifying it. This is a reason, it's not an excuse. There are people that cheat because their relationship is so good and they don't feel deserving of it, that they feel like they have to sabotage it. Like, there's a million different reasons why people cheat. Some people are just narcissists and don't actually have empathy for another person and just feel like they deserve to cheat because they just deserve to get gratification whenever they want to. And there's that. I mean, there's a million different reasons why people make the choice to cheat, but cheating is always the choice. And I firmly believe that it is always 100% the responsibility of the person who actually cheats, the person who's in the relationship that chooses to step out of the relationship. They made that choice, and the responsibility and the accountability is always on them. The health of your relationship is on two people, but no matter how bad the relationship is, it doesn't give an excuse for someone to cheat. It may give someone an excuse to not continue in the relationship or want to do things to work on the relationship. But as far as I'm concerned, cheating is, there's no excuse for ever cheating, ever, under any circumstances. But it's a choice that somebody makes. And there's usually some kind of a trigger that makes them decide to cheat. Now, when it comes to the question of, is it once a cheater, always a cheater? I would say that until you heal from the thing that led to you making the choice to cheat, you will continue that pattern, whatever that is. And again, it varies from person to person. There's various reasons why people make the choice to cheat. And again, this isn't making excuses, because I don't think there is an excuse for cheating, but it's a reason. Like, people have a reason. Like, there's a reason they made the decision to cheat. Whether it could be narcissism, it could be addiction, it could be self-sabotage, it could be because they are bored, it could be because they are afraid of commitment. Like, there's a million different reasons why people make the choice to cheat. And they will continue to make the choice to cheat until they heal from the trigger that leads them to make that choice. Say, for example, somebody cheats because maybe they're in a really great relationship, but they choose to cheat because they don't feel worthy of that relationship, so they decide they need to sabotage it. It's like they're gonna screw up the relationship before the relationship ends because they don't feel worthy of that relationship, and they're like afraid that this person is gonna realize that they're not worthy of the relationship. This is actually a much more common reason than most people talk about. If that's the reason, if you don't heal from that worthiness issue, then you will continue to get into relationships where you don't feel worthy and you're gonna sabotage it by cheating. But you can heal from that. It's gonna take work. But if you do work on that, yeah, you have the potential to get into a good relationship that you do feel worthy of, and you cannot make the choice to cheat. You know, I mean, again, the kind of stereotypical one that people have is like, oh, they're not getting their needs met in a relationship, so they decide to step out of the relationship, and that's why they choose to cheat. Again, not an excuse, it's an explanation. If you continue to get into relationships where you're not able to ask for what you want, you're continuing to get into relationships with people who can't meet your needs. Maybe you just can't ask for your needs met because you don't know how to communicate those needs, and you decide to step outside the relationship to get them. Until you step up and learn to ask for what it is that you want in the relationship, you're willing to be vulnerable and actually express your needs, or you're actually willing to get into relationships with somebody who can give you what it is that you truly want, you're probably going to continue the pattern. Because until you heal from the thing that is leading you to make the choice to cheat, and it's not somebody else, it's what you need to heal yourself. It's not like, oh, let me just get into another relationship and everything will be better, because you're still you. Like, you can get into a new relationship and maybe temporarily things might feel good because you might have like the high of a new relationship, but eventually you're still you at the end of the day. And whatever led you to cheat before, when that comes up again, like if it's a fear of commitment, like a new relationship that just feels like fun and exciting, and maybe doesn't have a ton of commitment, like you might be like, ooh, I can stay faithful to this person. But the minute that you go back into getting more committed with that person, if you cheated in past relationships because you were afraid of the commitment, the next relationship you get in, eventually when it gets to a point where you need to start making more of a commitment, you're probably going to cheat again. Until you heal from that part of yourself, you're probably going to keep repeating the pattern. So I don't believe that because somebody cheated at one point in their life in one relationship, that means that they're automatically going to cheat in every other relationship. But I do believe that if you have not done the healing work on yourself, if you have not fixed the part of yourself that has led you to make the choice to cheat, you will continue the pattern at some point, eventually. Maybe not right away, but you will eventually continue the pattern. And I gotta be honest, while I do know that like divorces can take a long time, so it did look like Israel was separated from his wife for a significant amount of time before the divorce was finalized, it does look like the actual divorce that Israel had from his first wife and then his relationship and marriage to Adrienne moved very quickly. And not saying you can't do the healing work, I'm not saying you can't do the inner work, maybe he has, I hope he has for the sake of Adrienne and his children, but timeline wise, it doesn't look like that. Like, I mean, because we're not talking about a man who just had a one-night stand, and again, I don't justify any kind of cheating, but we're not talking about a man who had a one-night stand in 20 years of marriage. And I mean, I wouldn't tolerate that even, but like, I'm just saying, like, this is not like this man had a moment of weakness in a one-night stand at a 20-year marriage. This is a man who fathered 2 children with another woman while he was married to his wife. That's pretty serious. And that's not something that you're going to be able to just go to a couple therapy sessions and like you're going to get fixed. Not going to happen. And I do know that there's, you know, Israel and Adrienne are very religious, and I think there's a lot of people that think they can just like pray that stuff away. And again, I'm not knocking prayer, I'm not knocking religion. It's your choice, but that stuff is not just going to go away. It's not just going to be like divine intervention. Like, you're going to have to do the work on yourself in order to heal that. I hope he has, and if he hasn't, I hope he does, for the sake of Adrienne and the children involved in this situation. Adrienne has been very open about the fact that she had a lot of fertility struggles. She had IVF for, I think she's like 6 years. She ended up having a baby via surrogacy. This is probably gonna piss off a lot of people. And I'm not saying that there aren't medical reasons why people have fertility struggles. I'm not knocking IVF or surrogacy. I think in some cases it's getting overused, especially by celebrities and things like that, but that's a whole other conversation. But I do think that there are, you know, valid reasons for it, and I think that it can be a really beneficial thing for certain people in certain circumstances. However, I do think that sometimes with women, our bodies don't allow us to get pregnant because our bodies know it's not safe to bring a child into the situation we're in. And I know that might be controversial, but I think sometimes as women, our bodies tell us things that we don't want to listen because our mind is like, no, I want this. And our bodies are like, no, you don't. Like, you don't want this. It's not good. And I mean, I had a slightly different experience, but I do believe, like, when I married my ex-husband, like, my libido disappeared. Like, it was gone. Like, it was like to the point where it was like I was actually afraid that there was like something medically wrong with me, because like I couldn't even have like a fantasy. Like, it was just completely shut down, and there was no health issue that was wrong with me. But I realized when I was going through my divorce, there was a lot of things that came out in the divorce process that I mean, I think maybe I knew, I wasn't really consciously aware of. And I really did come to the realization that my body was trying to stop me from bringing a child into the situation, because my body knew that it was not a good situation to bring a child into. And I am incredibly grateful that I didn't bring a child into my situation. I didn't have to drag my child through a messy divorce and things like that. But, and again, I'm not knocking things like IVF and fertility treatments and surrogacy and stuff, because I do think that there are circumstances where there are people out there who truly want a baby, who truly would be great parents, and I'm glad that those things are out there for people. But I also think that there are women out there who are so desperate to try to override things in their body, and their body is screaming at them to listen, like, and too many women are overriding that. And I just really want women to start really listening to their bodies. Like, listen to what your body is telling you. There might be a bigger reason why you're not getting pregnant or why your body is doing what it's doing. And I think sometimes we have to listen to that. And again, I'm not saying that you should ignore medical advice or medical intervention or anything like that, but I do think that women's bodies are a lot more powerful than we give ourselves credit for, and we really need to learn to listen to them. Adrienne and Israel are very religious, and I'm not here to knock anybody's choice to whether or not you want to be religious or not. I think it's your choice. I believe in religious freedom, and I'm not particularly a fan of organized religion because it really has never aligned for me. But I think it's every individual's choice, and I think if you find religion to better your life and you feel like your connection to religion is making your life better and making you a better person for the world, more power to you. I was raised Catholic, but I was raised Catholic in a very liberal part of the country. So, I mean, I feel like growing up, I had sort of a balance of different perspectives and things, and I never really like fully connected to organized religion, so I was often going through the motions. So I mean, that's just a little bit of like my own personal experience with religion. You know, when I see people that are very deeply tied to their religion, in this country it's primarily Christianity, but it does seem like there's this overwhelming pattern of people who are ministers or church leaders or, you know, men that are leaders in the church that are unfaithful, and then often use religion as like a, I don't know, they often use religion to sort of make excuses for that, like, oh, I'm only human, God is about forgiveness, and like it's almost like they end up using the church to enable that behavior. And look, we're all human, like nobody's perfect, like I'm not expecting anybody to be perfect, but you do get a lot of these men, especially leaders in like Christianity, that seem to use this whole like I'm human and imperfect as an excuse for like pretty bad behavior. And like, yeah, we all are human and imperfect, right? But I noticed this when I did my Ozzy and Sharon video, and I talked about like the red flags in Ozzy and Sharon's relationship as being like like the fact that he had attempted to murder his wife and that he cheated on his wife, and people still put their relationship up on a pedestal, and people were coming at me being like, oh, you think you're perfect? And I was like, well, I've never cheated on anyone and I've never tried to murder anyone. So, I mean, if that's your definition of perfect, I mean, it's like, of course I'm not perfect, but like, I don't think that, you know, not washing the dishes in the sink immediately is necessarily on the same level as like cheating on your partner. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I think that there's levels of like, hey, I'm human and I'm imperfect. Like, you know, hey, maybe somebody's not very punctual, or I don't know, you know, maybe somebody has a hard time opening up and talking about their feelings or whatever. I mean, like there's ways you can be imperfect, but it seems like like infidelity for men, particularly in Christianity, is like the go-to with, well, I'm not perfect. It's like, well, did you try? Like, I mean, it kind of seems like you're not trying. Like, I mean, I'm not necessarily saying you have to try to be perfect, but like, it seems like that's an avoidable mistake you could make. Like, maybe being late once in a while because you're not necessarily great with scheduling things, and maybe you're not great with factoring in traffic or something, so like you have an issue with punctuality. Maybe that's your imperfection, but like cheating seems like something that like you could aim to be better at. Like, that seems like not really just striving for perfection. That seems to just be like striving to not deliberately hurt somebody else kind of thing. And it does seem like with like sort of couples that are deeply into organized religion, living in America, it's primarily Christianity, but I mean, you know, a lot of organized religions are like this. It almost seems like there's this belief that how much a woman suffers for a man or for her marriage or for a relationship determines how loyal she is, or how devoted she is to God, or how devoted she is to, you know, her marriage or her relationship. And I'm not a fan of shame, but I just feel like as a man, men wear how much their wife is willing to suffer for them as a badge of honor, when in reality, men should be ashamed of that. Like, in reality, like, how good a husband you are should be determined by how glowing your wife is, like how happy your wife is, how great a life you have provided for her. Like, that should be the determining factor as to whether or not you're a good husband. Like, not whether or not your wife is willing to suffer all of the things that you are willing to like put on her, like the burdens and the torture that you're willing to put on her, like that's actually a sign that you're not a good person, that you're not a great husband. I mean, if you know, I get it, like it's a power dynamic, but like at the end of the day, like instead of being like, oh, my wife is willing to put up with my cheating and my misery, it's like, how about I'm such a great husband that my wife is literally glowing because I treat her so well, because I'm such a great husband, because I'm such a great man. Like, I think we need to flip that narrative around, because at the end of the day, like, it's these relationships where, you know, where women wear their suffering as a badge of honor is just really, it's disturbing at this point. Now, one of the things that stood out in the Adrienne Israel interview was Israel was kind of like bragging about the fact that he went to Adrienne with how much his life was falling apart because he had cheated on his wife, and she prayed for him. And he was expecting her to be all like, oh yeah, see, I knew men are trash and blah, 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 but that she prayed for him. And that Adrienne said that normally she would have been like, yeah, no, I know all men are trash, and of course you cheated, blah, blah, blah. But the fact that she went into, I'm gonna pray for you, that's like how she knew he was the one, because she reacted that way. Adrienne was like 31, I wanna say. I think she was like 32 when they got married. So I don't know exactly when this conversation happened, but we're talking like she was 30s, right? There is an overwhelming phenomenon I'm noticing with women in their 30s primarily, and this can affect women at any age, but I really do think that women in their 30s in particular, I'm noticing this. I experienced this and I've seen it too much. There's a lot of it in the media, and I think that we need to talk about it. I really do believe pick-me behavior picks up drastically in a woman's 30s. You're seeing it with Adrienne, where she was all of a sudden like thinking that like all men were trash and that all men were gonna cheat because that's what she's experienced. She meets a man who cheated on his wife, and all of a sudden she's like, let me pray for you, and she's like married to him and whatever and trying to have his baby. I see this with, I'm gonna get it from the Swifties, but I see this with Taylor and Travis. And again, I still do not believe their relationship is real. I stand by everything I've said in my previous videos about them. I probably will do an update on the Taylor-Travis relationship, probably maybe when her album comes out or something, because I've had a lot of requests for people that want me to do an updated video about her and Travis. Did not watch the whole New Heights podcast. I've only seen clips of it. I don't want to sit through it, but I might. We'll see. But maybe like when around the time her album comes out or something, I'll talk about it. But I am seeing this with Taylor and Travis. When I hear women in their 30s making excuses for men's behavior or putting men up on a pedestal that don't really deserve to be up on a pedestal, that's your biological clock talking. I know that there's people that don't believe in the biological clock. It's real. It is. It's not just a societal construct. However, society does perpetuate it, for sure. It's a combination of society and biology, but women in their 30s often have a biological clock, and that biological clock clouds a woman's judgment. So when I hear an Adrienne Bailon talk about meeting a man who cheated on his wife, and all of a sudden she's like, oh, let me pray for him, and then she decides to marry him even though her biggest fear is being cheated on, and she's overlooking the fact that he's already proven that he's a cheater. When I hear someone like Taylor Swift, again, I still don't think their relationship is real, but you hear someone like Taylor Swift saying that Travis Kelce is like the love that she's been writing about since she was in high school. She's putting him up on this pedestal that this man has no business being on. She created that in her head. Like, he's not really the love that she's been dreaming of since high school. Like, let's be real. I experienced it too. I got married at 36, and I will fully acknowledge that I settled for someone who was not what I truly wanted, and I fell for all the lines. I fell for everything that he pretended to be, because I was like, it's now or never. I want to have a family. I want to have a baby. Maybe this is it. And I got into it, and a year and a half later, I was like, whoa, this is not right, and I got out. Not every woman gets out. Some women get into it, and then they have a baby, and then they realize, like, what the hell? And some will stick it out, and some can't do it. You're not making a decision with a clear head. You are making a decision because you're in panic mode. I know I get pushback from this. Ladies, never settle. Who a woman marries and who she has a child with is literally the most important decision that a woman will ever make, because it affects every single area of her life. And when women make those decisions out of panic because time's running out, she is very likely to make a bad decision. Now, someone like Taylor maybe, who's a billionaire, can probably overcome any bad decision that she makes, and she'll make an album about it and she'll be fine. I'm just using that as an example. If you meet someone in your 30s and you start putting him up on a pedestal, or you start overlooking the red flags, like in Adrienne's case, if you're like, oh, I've always been afraid of a cheater, and you end up marrying somebody who you know has proven that he will cheat on his spouse, you're overlooking the red flags, or you're putting a man up on a pedestal that, first of all, the minute you put a man up on a pedestal, the higher the pedestal, the further he has to fall. Just saying. If you start doing that, you gotta take a look at whether or not you are really seeing this man for who he is, or you aren't just like, oh my God, the clock is ticking, time is running out, I wanna have a kid. And I get it, because I've been there, but making a decision to have a child, to get married and have a child with somebody out of panic or desperation is not gonna lead to you making a good decision. And again, some of these celebrities, you know, if they make a bad decision, they'll get out of it. And Taylor will have a hit album about it, and I don't know if Adrienne will ever leave. I hope she's okay, but you know, they can get out of these situations. But for the average woman, you could get yourself stuck in a situation that you might not be able to get yourself out of. And I don't want to see that happen. You know, I was lucky enough to get out of my situation, but not everybody is going to be. Ladies, never settle. Never settle. And I know that's a controversial statement right now, because I already know I'm going to get backlash from a lot of guys that are just basically, you know, women aren't worth it, blah, 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 whatever. I'm going to get a whole bunch of pushback from this. I don't care. As someone who did, as someone who reached 36 and panicked, and no, it is not because like I was run through, it was not because I put my career first. I was actively looking for a partner. I actively wanted to be a stay-at-home wife and mother this whole time. I just could not meet a guy who also wanted that. I reached 36 and I found a guy who said all the right things and told me he wanted the same things as me, and I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Got into the marriage and realized that that was absolutely not what was happening. It was not, I'm like, I did everything right. It is a myth that if you are a good woman who wants to find like a stable relationship and you want to find a man who's going to be a protector and provider, that those men are out there, because they're few and far between, because most men today have no clue how to be a husband and father. And I made the decision that I was not going to get into a relationship and have a child with someone that I did not believe was going to be a good husband and father, and that man did not come along. And I got married. I came very close to deciding to have a child with this person who I absolutely settled for. Not because he was like a bad human, but because he was not going to be the husband and father that I believed that a child deserved. I am so grateful that I got out of that situation before I brought a child into that dynamic. And it was actually during my divorce that I came to the realization that if I had had a child, that I was going to put my child through all the same pain and suffering that I had gone through growing up. And I'm so grateful that I didn't do that. It breaks my heart every day that that meant that I may not have a child. I may not have a family. I made that decision myself because I did not want to bring a child into the world with a man who was not going to be a good husband and father. And newsflash, those men are few and far between. I know there's a lot of push for women to just find a man and just, you know, oh, don't wait too long, ladies, or it's like we don't actually talk about the fact that most women are not putting off marriage and kids because they'd rather have a career first, or because they just want to fool around with men that aren't good for them or whatever. That happens, but that's not that common. Most women are not settling down because there is a massive shortage of men who are husband and father material. And I firmly believe that as a woman, you should not be going through life thinking, I want to have a kid, I want to get married, I want to have a family. You need to go through life and not make the decision to get married and have a family until you meet a man that is actually going to step up and be the husband and father that your child deserves. And this is not about the kind of woman that you are. This is not about, you know, I know there's a lot of guys who are going to be like, well, if she's this, then what, how should she deserve a man like this? Every child, every potential child out there deserves to have a father that is going to be a great father and a great husband to the mother of his kids. Every child deserves that. So I don't care who you are as a woman, you are not picking a man just because you think that you deserve something or anything. Like, you pick a man that your future child deserves to have as a father. You pick that man. And if you don't meet that man, do not have a baby. I mean, I would go out on a limb here and be like, don't sleep with a man that is not that man. Because when you sleep with a man, there's always the potential that you could create a child. And don't sleep with a man that is not going to step up and be the father that any potential child you might have deserves. Plain and simple. I just don't think, I'm so tired of the narrative that like, oh, well, women wait until this age, or I'll wait until this age to have a kid, or I'll do this. No. You don't have a child with a man until you find a man who will step up and be the husband and father that your family, your child deserves to have. Like, that needs to be the decision. But unfortunately, too many women, we get to a certain age and we panic and we think, you know what, like, we gotta have a baby and it's gotta be now and we settle. And at the end of the day, like, there's just not enough good men in the world that are willing to step up and be husbands and fathers. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And this is not the video to get into all those reasons. I'm so tired of the narrative, because the minute that you start telling women that, like, time is running out, women panic, they settle, they get into bad relationships with men that have no business being husbands and fathers. I find it frustrating. And look, I get it, because as someone who has had to do a lot of emotional soul searching and having to come to the realization that having children may not be in the cards for me, as painful as that is, I 1000% believe it is better for me to not be a mother and to bring a child into the world with a man that I settled for because I just wanted to have a child. I don't think any child deserves to be brought into the world out of desperation, out of, you know, the idea that the clock is ticking. You know, I think children deserve to be brought into the world with two parents that really want to show up and want to be parents and want to be partners for each other. I don't think that women should be sleeping with men that don't qualify for that. I mean, I just, you know, that goes down a whole rabbit hole. But I see this so much with women. They reach their 30s and they go into a panic and they start justifying men's bad behavior. They start putting men up on a pedestal that do not belong there. And it breaks my heart. It does. And I get it. You know, I started down that path, and I can tell you, as somebody who got into a marriage and settled, it is not worth settling for. You will be more miserable settling than you will be being single. I got out of my marriage and I came to the realization that every single area of my life got better when I left my marriage, which is ironic because while we were married, every single aspect of my ex-husband's life got better. Like, I made every single area of his life better and every area of my life got worse. And then when our marriage ended, and it's not to say, like, I've been through a lot of struggles since my marriage ended, but every single one of them was easier to deal with because I didn't have a husband in the picture. And I just got really grounded in the decision that I'm not going to get into a relationship unless it's with a man who makes my life better. I've never been in a relationship like that. Every relationship I've ever been in has made my life more difficult. I might be single forever. It might happen. That, to me, is healing from pick-me behavior, because I did want to get married and have a family. I wanted it really badly. It ended up leading me to make really bad decisions because I wanted it so badly. One of the common complaints I see of kind of the decenter men, pick-me girl kind of narrative is that it doesn't consider a woman's desire to be in partnership, to be in a relationship. And I mean, look, I firmly believe that, you know, as people, we're meant for community and connection. And I think it's also important to find that community and connection, not just in romantic relationships, but I think finding it in, you know, friendships and in other areas in life, and finding fulfillment in other areas is also important and should be something to focus on. But look, at the end of the day, the majority of women are going to want a romantic relationship. That's just reality. Some aren't. And I don't judge anybody who doesn't want one, your choice. But most women are going to desire a romantic relationship. And denying that fact is not gonna help the situation. However, what I can say very confidently from my own experience and a lot of the mistakes that I've made in life and things is that your desperation for a relationship and for male attention and male validation will lead you to get into bad relationships. You will not get into a good relationship if you are desperate for a relationship. You have to get to the point where you are okay being single and you are okay being on your own before you can get into a healthy relationship. Believe me, I know firsthand how challenging that is. It's been something that I still work on, to be honest. Like, I still fantasize sometimes about having a man just come in and like rescue me from things going on. Like, I still have that fairy tale fantasy. I still have an inner Charlotte York Goldenblatt that is a hopeless romantic and stuff. I mean, I still have that part of me, and I hope I never lose it completely. But you have to heal from that. You have to heal from that, because that mentality is going to get you into bad relationships and bad situations. It's going to cloud your judgment. It's going to lead you to ignore red flags that are really important to pay attention to. At its best, it's going to get you into a relationship that just might not be aligned for you. At its worst, it could get you into a really, really bad relationship. And I hope that doesn't happen for any of you. But that's why, like, I created my guided journals, like the Recovering Pick-Me Girl guided journal and the Dark Feminine Energy guided journal. Not because I think there's anything wrong with women desiring a romantic relationship. However, as someone who definitely lived in that, like, neediness and desperation, I lived a very, like, hopeless romantic fantasy about that whole idea for so long. It got me into a lot of bad situations because it clouded my judgment. And again, I would never tell a woman to not desire a relationship, to not desire partnership, but unfortunately, you really have to heal from that, like, desperate need for it. It's okay to desire it, but that neediness for it, it's going to get you in bad situations. And I see it too many times. I see it too often. I think Adrienne and Israel's relationship is one of those situations. In Adrienne and Israel's relationship, Adrienne admitted that, like, her biggest fear was being cheated on, and she had consistently been cheated on. And she ends up getting into a relationship with a man, marrying a man and having a child with a man, and really, really tried to have a child with a man who had proven that he could be unfaithful in relationships. And not just proven that he had a one-night stand, again, I don't justify that, but, like, that he actually had a long enough relationship that he could father 2 children outside of wedlock. Like, that's a pretty extreme example of infidelity right there. And she willingly got into that relationship. And, you know, look, it's her reasons, it's her life, it's her decision. But I can't help but feel like that was her panic of, oh no, I'm in my 30s. What am I gonna do? I gotta settle down. I gotta have a family. I gotta do this. This guy's here. I mean, it's kind of the female version of the Cab Light Theory. You know, with men, like the Cab Light Theory from Sex and the City, where it's like, for men, it's like when they're ready for a relationship, they turn their light on, and then the next woman that comes in, that's who they marry. You know, like, men just marry the woman that happens to be there. Women have their own version of that. It usually is tied to their biological clock. And, oh, it doesn't lead to good relationships. It doesn't. It doesn't lead to good situations. And even, like, I tried to watch some of the video clips of Adrienne and Israel kind of talking about their relationship, and they're so vague about their relationship and how they got together. And, like, maybe it's because there was controversy around it, I don't know, but, like, it all seems like they talk about, like, how romantic the proposal was and how wonderful the wedding is, and, like, it does seem like they're putting their relationship up on this pedestal and focusing so much on, like, the romanticism of it. That's usually a sign that they're hanging on to those things because there's other issues going on. And I wish the best for them, especially because they have a child, and Israel's got a lot of children. So, I mean, I hope that everything is on the up and up, but I just want women to learn from this. I think women in their 30s are especially susceptible to this, where your biological clock kicks in and you're not making good decisions. And I just don't want to see that happen. I mean, again, I like Adrienne. I'm not saying that she's perfect. I think I mean, after watching her on The Real and stuff for a long time, I think she usually had some kind of takes on relationships that I think were often questionable. I think she seems like a good person, but she does seem to have a problem picking the right men. Again, she's so afraid of cheating, but yet she keeps getting involved with men who cheat, and she has a child. I wish the best for her. I feel like she's kind of a classic example of a woman who has a light in her, she has a spark in her, and I feel like there's a lot of men out there that wanna, like, they wanna latch onto that energy, they wanna latch onto that spark and end up stealing that spark. They wanna dim her light. And Israel's there's always been something off about him. And again, this was before I even really knew much about his cheating or anything, but just something about him. And again, before I even knew anything about him, and I just heard that she was dating him, like, back in the day when they first announced that they were together and stuff, it was just something about him that it gave me the ick, and I could never really put my finger on it. And the more that I looked into their relationship, the more I was like, oh. I honestly, I wish the best for her, because again, she has a child and there are children involved. Israel's got a lot of kids. I wish the best for everybody. And I think because of their deeply religious views, they might stick it out. I worry that some of this is going to be a test in how much Adrienne is willing to put up with. And I do think that she is somebody who might end up putting up with a lot just for the image and just to put on a show. And I don't wish that for anybody. I really don't. These were just some topics that kind of came to mind when I watched the Adrienne Israel podcast interview with Angie Martinez. You can watch it here on YouTube. It's really not that long. It's like an hour and 20 minutes. So if you want to check out the interview and anything maybe that came up for you, any thoughts or anything. I know a lot of people online were kind of buzzing about this. These are just some topics that came to mind when I was doing some research about this couple. So if you have any thoughts on Adrienne Israel, their podcast interview, their relationship, or any of the topics I talked about in this video, or any other video requests, let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. I love to hear from you, and I love your video suggestions. I've got my, well, this is leopard print, but kind of cheetah print. She's a cheetah girl. I don't know, trying to be cute. I'm not wearing more makeup today, but I'm probably gonna get people say I'm wearing more makeup, because I've noticed every time I wear a bright lip color, people are like, oh my god, why are you wearing so much makeup? But I'm literally wearing the exact same amount of makeup in every video. I just sometimes wear a bright lip and sometimes I don't. It's actually kind of crazy. But anyway, I also have a makeup tutorial on here, as well as a skincare routine and everything, so you can tell exactly what I do with my face. Separate subject. If you would like to heal from your pick-me energy, I highly recommend you check out my guided journals, the Recovering Pick Me Girl guided journal and the Dark Feminine Energy guided journal. They're both available on Amazon. Links are in the description box below, along with links to all my social media accounts. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up, and be sure you subscribe to my channel. Honestly, any engagement on this channel really does help to boost it in the algorithm so more people can get this message. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.